Okay, again, we got white, interestingly enough. Knight to f3, knight c6, bishop goes to b5. They go d6. How do we handle d6? I'm assuming there are few moves here. One of the moves would be probably going d4. I'm assuming another one is probably short castle. There could be c3 also. So let's try maybe going d4 and see how he handles it. They're letting us take control of the center. Let's do so. Okay, they do take. Actually, most logical move there would probably be c3 and d4, actually. Now that I think about it. Okay, this also makes a lot of sense. Now we could take there with the bishop. Or we could go short castle. If they take knight takes d4, we'll take bishop d7 check first, because if we were to take the knight on d4, bishop takes bishop. So clearly we don't want to lose the bishop. So we take the d7 first and then we take on d4. Oh wow, long castle, no joke. What about the development? Knight f6 or bishop e7. I guess knight f6 and then bishop e7 short castle would probably be about even. Now he decides to go long castle immediately. When the d file is open, long castle is not always a good idea. Okay. Now in this position, actually, the reason why it is not a good idea is this rook was protecting the a7 pawn. And after castle, that is no more the case. So now we can take that pawn with the checkmate threat on a8 immediately. Oh my God. We always want to ask ourselves, what does opponent want with the last move? So after we would have taken queen a7, if we were playing with black, we want to ask ourselves, what does opponent want? What is their threat? Okay. And if they did that, then they would see that we are threatening the checkmate on the back rank. So then most likely moving the queen away from d7 so king could run away would make the most sense. You capitalize the great checkmate attack, capitalizing on your advantage to secure victory. My opponent might be reporting me to cheating now because I played 99% one accuracy. Steinitz. Oh, we were right. What are the chances actually, huh? That I opened the Gajewski's course. First thing it was reviewed was like Steinitz Defense. And it was literally what they played. That was an interesting coincidence. Okay, apparently after d4, bishop to d7, the recommendation here, the most popular continuation according to Mega Database, does not deserve to be won. It is hard to imagine what black could possibly hope for other than a good chance that white would not now the best reaction. Okay, something is wrong with this sentence. I intend to deal with this hope. So he wants us to take on c6, apparently saying that that's a power move. Bishop takes c6. Why is that? The important nuance: knight c3, e d4, knight d4, knight f6, bishop c6. Black can recapture with a pawn, but now does not have that option. So that is the reason why we would take on c6 now with the bishop. We want them to take back with the bishop, apparently, because if pawn takes, then we take and win the pawn on e5. This is Gajewski's course, Gajewski or Gajewski. How do we pronounce that? Gajewski? I pronounced it with Gajewski. He trains Gukesh, world champion. So knight c3, e takes d4. Now the e5 pawn is under attack. Knight e takes d4, knight takes d4. Okay, that makes sense actually, because if b takes c6 and bishop is on d7, black is quite okay there. He thinks that e takes d4, knight takes d4. Now this gives white a little advantage. Let's see what it says. g6. His recommendation after g6 is knight takes c6, exploiting the fact that black's bishop is not yet on g7. b takes c6, queen to d4, eating the rook, knight f6, bishop g5, bishop g7, e5, and black will have no compensation for the broken pawn structure. All right, that makes sense, because now if pawn takes here, then queen takes. I guess queen e7 would be really bad, because queen takes e7, king e7, black loses the castle. We go short castle, and then want to bring the rook to e1, and now we have pressure on the both open files, open central files. King has lost the castling rights, the black king, and their pawn structure is very weak, like double pawns on the c file. What would you recommend for beginners? Learn all openings? Not really all openings. You want to have probably, what my recommendation would be is learn one solid opening with white and one solid opening with black against e4, one solid opening against d4. Okay, so that would be 3 solid openings. Get good at it, play bunch of games. Once you're done with the games, game review, analyze them, see where you make mistakes, and then do it over again. Then again, once you lose, you do game review, see where you make mistakes, and then you play them again. Correct them according to the computer. Okay, computer tells you there what to do, right, in the game review. All right. Once you get good at them, okay, then you can keep adding. If you feel like adding to your repertoire one more aggressive, you can. But I think that is enough up to the 1000 rating. Okay, up to 1000, you probably need one good, like solid opening with white and 2 with black, because a lot of people nowadays play d4 also. So you need one against e4, one against d4. My personal recommendation, and in this speedrun series, I'll be recommending balancing the center. So against e4, I'm recommending simply e5. Against d4, I'm recommending d5. So queen's pawn, basically if white plays queen's pawn, black plays also queen's pawn. If white starts with king's pawn, you also balance the center with the king's pawn. Okay, keeping it simple. Gajewski. That's what Gukesh calls him. Gajewski. Makes sense. Makes sense. I'm not sure if that's a pun or for real. Okay, since the short and sweet is really quick, let's take a look at the, while we're at it, what his deal is with the other lines. Bishop b5, d6, d4, bishop d7. Okay, we take on c6, bishop c6, knight c3, takes, knight f6. Okay, so against g6, we would take on c6 and play queen d4. Right? Against knight f6, we apparently go queen e2. Black will not be able to develop his dark square bishop on the long diagonal now. Reason for it is apparently if g6, this is exactly what we hoped for. Then we go bishop g5, bishop g5, bishop g7, and it's actually losing by force after knight c6 and e5. D takes e5, and apparently queen e5 gotta be very strong too, there's no doubt. That's also like +1 and something, but apparently knight e4 wins by force. This move is not so obvious, but white was much better anyway. Black is ready to unpin the queen, so the point is, if short castle, we'll go queen f3 and increase our pressure on the f6, and we win the piece there on f6. This is going to be a deadly pin, and black is actually not able to get out of the pin comfortably, looks like. So queen e7 is the only move, threatening queen b4 check. Apparently now we take knight f6, bishop takes f6, queen goes to f3, double attacking the bishop on f6 and pawn on c6, after which there will be another double attack on the rook and the king. So bishop g5, we take on c6, then we take on a8, and queen returns back, either b7 or e4, I would assume, we won an exchange, rook for a bishop, and we can castle on the next move with the considerable material advantage, which should be easy to convert, relatively easy to convert. Okay, I think this is simple enough, actually. Let's do the last one as well, because this is gonna be quick too. So again, Steinitz system, d4, knight d4, bishop d7, knight c3, knight f6, short castle, bishop to, wait, hold on, didn't he say, this is e d4, okay. The previous line was bishop d7, and if he plays bishop d7, we immediately take on c6, okay. Now e d4, knight d4, bishop d7, knight goes to c3, that's what his recommendation is. I played in my game here, I played short castle. I was not familiar with the exact move order difference, what the difference is, so I just castled, which should also be a very natural move. But let's see what the difference is. Knight c3, knight f6, short castle. I guess there's not much of a difference here. Bishop e7. Yeah, I don't think there's a big difference. I think these two moves would transpose to each other. My opponent just didn't allow the transposition. He, after short castle, he captured on d4 immediately. And this would be another recommendation of mine. Seeing the capture and going for the capture is one of the big reasons why players may have difficulty improving beyond a certain point, okay? If you are not gaining something out of the trade, you have no business in the trade. So seeing the trade does not mean that we should take the trade, okay? We're not playing checkers. So in this case, like knight d4, I would say, gave me actually a very active square, active development for the queen, you know? And that queen actually cost him a game. He castled next, and that activity of that queen was exactly what got him mated, literally a move later. People who trade aimlessly are wood choppers. Okay, bishop e7, knight takes c6, bishop takes c6, bishop takes c6. Now we do a bunch of trades here, and now black is left with the double pawns, okay, on the queen side, c6 and c7. So white is slightly better due to the superior pawn structure, looks like. f4 short castle, queen goes to f3, but then did better with b3, bishop b2. Now at f4, queen f3. Yeah, it is. It makes a lot of sense. I would also probably develop naturally, play with bishop f4. Bishop f4 I think makes a lot of sense earlier. If I didn't know that the f4 is usually a good idea, I would probably play bishop f4, queen d3 or queen d2, rook a d1, rook fe1. I think that makes a lot of sense. All right, queen goes to b8, and this move is a bit more challenging than direct bishop f6 because where white is clearly better. Let's say we go bishop f2, and apparently then e5, d takes e5, queen takes c6 with the great advantage because the knight is hanging on d7 right now, I think. If you take on b2, I would assume we probably can go knight e4 or knight d5. Let's see. If you were to take queen b2, oh wow, no, knight a4 wins the piece. Okay, that's easier. That's definitely easier. Okay, so queen b8 and then b3 because the pawn was now under attack. This had to be anticipated, of course. Queen goes, no, bishop f6. Then we go bishop f2. Now knight is defending and we are ready to develop the queen's rook. Also e5 is the threat. Okay, queen b4 makes a lot of sense to put the pressure on this c3 knight. And now we have e5. This move has been hanging in the air for the last few moves. D takes e6, d takes e5, queen takes c6. Now queen is beautifully placed on c6. E takes f4, we have knight to d5. Attacking queen, attacking the bishop, and we are also attacking the knight. So queen d6 is pretty much the only move. Queen takes d6, c takes d6, and rook a to d1. White is clearly better. Our pieces are far more active, and most likely we will win the d6 pawn, which would mean that our queenside pawns will become extremely dangerous. Okay, so our pawn structure is much better, basically. We should note that bishop e5 protecting these both pawns fails due to knight e7 check, king h8, knight f5, and black cannot save the d6 pawn. Okay, we will win that pawn, and we're gonna have 3 versus 1 on the queen side, while on the king side opponent has 4 versus 2, but the f pawns are doubled, so they're gonna be much harder to push. Now, guys, if you're thinking that, oh man, this is like 21 moves of theory, like I'm not gonna remember 21 moves of theory, you do not need to remember 21 moves of theory. You really need to understand probably first, like maybe first 10, 11 moves, okay? To be able to play it. The rest of the moves is given to give you an idea what the typical plans are, okay? In order to start playing this, I think knowing 10, 11 moves are enough.